Hey, up, right. I'm a Yorkshireman, and a Yorkshireman's favourite phrase, or one of our favourite phrases, is I told you so. And on this occasion, I get to say I told you so twice, because I've been making videos about the advent of electric cars now for 5 years, believe it or not. And for about 4 of those 5 years, one of the biggest arguments that supporters of electric vehicles have put forward is that you don't have to pay road tax, so the cheapest chips to run. And I made several videos over the years explaining this was only a temporary situation. They weren't going to be tax-free forever, and the tax exemption was simply a temporary carrot in order to fool people into thinking that they were going to be cheaper to run. And then, lo and behold, in April of this year, it became law that electric vehicle owners had to start paying for a vehicle excise licence. And that included owners of electric motorcycles. Now, in both cases, this was a reduced tax rate. They can't put the full tax rate onto these because they're still trying to pretend to everybody that they're going to be cheaper to run long term, so they can't pile the charges on too quickly, otherwise the slow uptake of electric vehicles is going to get even slower. So they're introducing it in increments, but mark my words, 5 years from now it'll cost the same to tax an electric vehicle as it will the equivalent petrol or diesel vehicle. Because in 5 years' time, with the 2030 deadline, you'll have no choice. That is, of course, assuming that the 2030 deadline for the ban of sales of new petrol and diesel cars goes ahead. And I've just realised I've got 3 I told you so's rather than 2. Now, I've said from the beginning that electric cars are all part of this net zero dream, and I've always said from the beginning net zero will eventually bankrupt this country, and it's partly responsible for the situation that we're in now. Now, a lot of countries have already rode back on net zero because they realise that far from it saving the planet, it's actually economic suicide. It destroys industry and commerce, and it puts the cost of living up for everybody. And that's a situation that we're in now, and make no mistake, net zero is part of the problem that's got us to where we are now. It's decimated our heavy industries, which includes car manufacturing, which has handed on a plate manufacture of affordable electric cars to the Chinese. This has caused closures of car manufacturing plants here in the UK, which I've reported on in the past, and all the money that goes into buying those electric cars goes straight out of the country to the People's Republic of China. So that's assisting in the contraction of our economy, which leads to lower revenue for the government through taxes. Now, part of the reason for this, and it has now officially been acknowledged, is that our energy prices in this country are just about the highest in the world. 4 times what it is in the United States. So obviously our industries are just uncompetitive. Manufacturing requires a lot of energy, and when you're spending a lot more money on your energy just to manufacture your goods, there's no way you can compete with what other people are doing in other countries. And of course, as manufacturing closes down, you have more people out of work, which means that your tax revenue becomes more important because those people need benefits to keep them going until they find the next job, if they can find the next job. Now, part of the reason, well, there's 2 reasons really for this expensive energy. One is the reliance on renewables, or the drive towards renewables, which are pushing the cost of electricity especially up. And the fact that back in 2001, something which has become intrinsic to net zero now, the government loaded what was known as green tariffs onto the cost of electricity and gas. Now, you don't see this on your electricity bill, and it's amazing how many people are not even aware that it exists. The government puts about a 16% tax on all electricity and gas sold, and that's paid for by the supplier. So it doesn't appear on your bill, but obviously the supplier adds that onto the price of your gas and electricity. So when you use a unit of gas or electricity, 16% of that cost is this green tax that the government collects. Now, obviously, everybody in the country pays for gas and electricity, so this creates quite a sizable amount of revenue that the government then gives to these energy suppliers that specialise in wind farms and solar farms as a pot sweetener, a subsidy to make it cheaper for them to build wind farms and solar farms. So, basically it's money for nothing for these people. In fact, because of the ridiculous Ponzi scheme agreements the government made with these companies, some of this money is even used to pay them not to produce electricity. It's used to pay them to turn the wind turbines off during times of low demand so that it doesn't overload the system. After all, we can't expect these rich foreign companies to be out of pocket just because we don't need the electricity that they're producing, do we? They're paid not to produce electricity, and this can run into millions of pounds a day. Some of that money is even siphoned off and sent to developing countries to help them with their net zero aims and projects. Now, of course, one of the UK government's favourite tricks is to charge you tax on top of tax that you've already paid. So you're paying 16% tax on this electricity when you receive it, but then on top of that tax, you charged another 5% in domestic energy VAT, on top of the price of your electricity and on top of the tax that you've already paid. So it equates to round about 25% of your electricity bill is just tax to go onto this net zero Ponzi scheme. So electric vehicle owners that charge at home are already paying 24 or 25% tax on the energy that they use to propel the vehicles. Now, that's if they're charging at home. If they're using public chargers, there'll be a 20% VAT charge on top of the green levy and the cost of the electricity, so they'll be paying even more. So a lot of these people could argue they're already paying the way, but the truth of the matter is it's simply not enough, and the public purse is starting to feel the strain. You see, for the last 5 years, electric vehicles have been a parasitic drain on the motorist cash cow that the government has been relying on for decades now. Now, there's sort of two reasons for this. One is that net zero and other sort of financial mismanagement of public purses have had an adverse effect on our economy, which in turn has led to a cost of living crisis. So when people are short of money, they think more carefully about when and how much they use the cars, which means people are buying less petrol than they were, sort of 2 or 3 years ago. Now, I remember researching this about 4 or 4.5 years ago for a video. At that time, the government pulled in about £40 billion a year through fuel duty. Now, for those of you that don't know what fuel duty is, again, this is a stealth tax. A lot of people don't realise that they're paying it, on top of which is 20% VAT, this double taxing situation that I've talked about with energy, whereby about 70% of the cost of petrol and diesel is just tax that goes straight into the government coffers. So for every £1 you spend on petrol or diesel, 70 pence or thereabouts of that cost is tax. And of course, if people are travelling less and buying less petrol and diesel, and then people are buying electric cars where they're not buying sort of petrol and diesel at all, that revenue is going to plummet, and it's currently estimated only to be about 25 billion to 30 billion a year. It's dropped substantially. That's a lot of money that the government has lost through net zero in only 4 or 5 years. So to redress the balance and start getting a bit more cash in, it looks like the government have decided that the electric vehicle owner, that's cars and bikes, are going to have to start paying their way with pay per mile charges. on top of the vehicle excise licences that they now have to pay for, and on top of the green levy and VAT that they have to pay for the energy that they're using to charge the cars. And it's going to be in the order of about 3 pence per mile. Now, I made it clear several years ago that, again, fuel duty was a big thing and the government wasn't going to be able to allow electric vehicle owners to get away without paying some sort of substitute for that, and that, basically amounts to the third "I told you so." Over the decades, our governments have become addicted to fuel duty. It's one of the biggest tax revenue sources at their disposal. And as electric cars grow in popularity, if that's going to happen, they cannot allow it to dwindle to nothing. Now, the news of this pay per mile charge for electric vehicles only, let's just get that straight, it's not going to be for petrol and diesel owners as well, because they already pay enough, let's face it, seems to have come into the public domain via some sort of government leak. Now, we know that we've got a budget coming up at the end of this month. I first learned about this about a week and a half ago through the Financial Times, but all major news outlets have reported pretty much the same news over the last week and a half. So obviously it's come from some sort of government source, which seems to be unofficial, but it's a way of sort of warning us that it's coming, and it's likely to be announced in this next budget. Now, the strange thing about it, and this is the bit that, to be quite honest, I don't believe, it's going to be based on a self-reported charge, i.e. the owner of the motorcycle, the electric motorcycle, or the EV, the electric car, will declare to the government how many miles they expect to travel in the next year, and they will pay the pay per mile charge, I don't know, in instalments or in advance, we don't really know, but that doesn't sound right to me. There is no tax in this country that relies on self-reporting. It usually requires some sort of proof to ratify the figures, because let's face it, most people, if they know that they're going to be doing 10,000 miles a year in their car, and it's just left up to them to sort of declare how much that they're going to travel without providing any checks and balances, they're just going to say, oh, well, I only expect to be doing 2,000 or 3,000 miles next year. Nobody's going to declare the full amount that they expect to be travelling. And of course, if they did, there's always the danger of overestimating it. I mean, I know some years I'll do 5,000 miles in my car, some years I'll only do 3,000 miles in my car. It all depends how well the biking season's gone, really, and how much I've had to resort to using the car over a motorcycle. Unchecked self-reporting is incredibly unreliable, and the government's going to want its full pound of flesh. It's not going to accept half measures. So I think it's been released with this news that it's going to rely on self-reporting, but I think that's a red herring designed to encourage acceptance without any pushback from electric car owners. But I think we'll find further down the line there will be something put in place to ensure that the figures people present are impeccably correct, so that the government gets every penny it expects from every driver. Now, I think the reason that they've sort of introduced it as self-reporting is because their intention is that in the future this pay per mile scheme is going to pull electric vehicle owners, and in the future all vehicle owners, because we'll all have to have electric vehicles eventually if they get their own way, into Big Brother territory. I think their intention is to pull all motorists into minute by minute surveillance. All electric vehicles are connected to the internet these days, and of course they're trying to push digital ID onto everybody, so your car can be connected up to your digital ID, which will record how many miles you travel, so that at the end of the year or at the end of each month or whatever, they can ascertain exactly where you've been, how far you've travelled, and how much money you owe them. But obviously that's going to give them an awful lot more information on your day-to-day habits as well. Mark my words, this is a Trojan horse that is going to give them access to your private life. And of course, if and when it's introduced, it'll only be 3p per mile for the first year or two, then they'll start increasing it. So I think the day of running electric cars cheaply on UK roads is pretty much numbered. Now, if people realise, of course, that this is going to be a Trojan horse into surveilling your every move, and it's successfully rejected, another way this could be ascertained is that at the end of every year you take it into, I don't know, say an MOT testing station where they will recall your mileage and enter it onto the system. That seems to be the most sensible way, but obviously it will incur a charge. But the infrastructure for accurate recording of your mileage is already there. MOT stations are on the system. It would just take a little bit of additional software on behalf of the DVLA to make sure that information went to Customs and Revenue. I think that, to me, is the most logical solution. But I think they are going to try and push us down the Big Brother route with this. For a start, I think it's very naive of anybody to believe that the government will rely on collecting taxes based on self-reporting. Internationally, the UK's reputation for fairness to its citizens and freedom of speech, etc., is sliding to an all-time low, especially since this current government came into power. Now, I'm sure a lot of people will jump into the comment section and accuse me of being a conspiracy theorist. I've had it all before, and I've usually been proven to be right, but I don't think it's any coincidence that paper mile on vehicles and digital ID have sort of come onto the public stage at the same time. I think they're connected. Keir Starmer has already publicly stated that digital ID will be optional. You don't have to have it, but you won't be able to get a job if you don't have it. And let's face it, if they turn around and say, no, digital ID is optional, you don't have to have it, but you're not going to be able to drive a car without it, because we need to be able to ascertain how much duty you owes on this paper mile. It's coercion. A huge proportion of our population are drivers. They need cars to get to work, they need cars to go to the shops. For most people, a car or a motorcycle is essential for them to be able to lead their daily lives. If you're given a choice between not being able to drive unless you have a digital ID, what choice are a lot of people going to have? Right, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I would also appreciate it if you would like this video and press the hype button if it is available to you. It is very important to YouTube channels now that the hype button is utilised. And it would be fantastic if you would subscribe to this channel if you're not already a subscriber. Now, there are other ways you can help me out via my Patreon page or via PayPal donations, or you can use the super thanks button down below. Not essential, but it is appreciated. I will, of course, be back on Friday. So until then, please ride safely, and I'll see you soon.